We're pleased to welcome today to the Wilson Center the Foreign Minister of the Republic of North Macedonia, Bujar Osmani. Minister Osmani was formerly the Deputy Prime Minister for European Affairs, and this year with North Macedonia as Chairman-in-Office of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the OSCE. His mandate is indeed pan-European. Mr. Minister, welcome to Washington. Welcome to the Wilson Center. With Putin's war against Ukraine, Russia has violated the fundamental principles of all participating states in the OSCE. As Chairman-in-Office for 2024, how do you assess OSCE's role in the current situation? How is OSCE functioning, particularly given the budget impasses?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me and for providing me the opportunity to talk about OSCE in this important institution. North Macedonia assumed the OSCE chairpersonship as of 1st of January this year, in the most difficult and challenging time. Even though the OSCE has been confronting many challenges over recent years, the war of aggression against Ukraine further aggravated the geopolitical landscape, but also eroded, as you said, the very foundation of this organization that was established almost 50 years ago to enable a platform for permanent dialogue among non-like-minded countries. Just to remind, it was established during the détente between the Cold War blocs, and it served its purpose. It introduced cooperative security through its unique, comprehensive approach to security. So not looking to security only through its conventional military perspective, but also through its environmental and economic dimension, and particularly its human dimension. OSCE is unique also in having field operations in conflict regions. We call them the crown jewels of the organization, and it has a versatile toolbox and instrumentarium for all cycles of conflicts. But with the war of aggression against Ukraine further complicated the functionality of the organization, since this is consensus-based organization. The dialogue should be in good faith, and the dialogue should be within the frames established by the principles and commitments of the organization, which make the foundation, the raison d'etre of this organization. These are the 10 commitments of the Helsinki Decalogue: respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, non-violation of border, non-use of force to achieve political gains. And Russia violated blatantly all these principles.
The principles that they helped to establish in founding the organization.
They voluntarily agreed to uphold when we established this organization. So, as chair-in-office, we had this. It is expected from the chair-office to be an honest broker among the 57 participating states in this large OSCE area. Is the
57 members, participating states,
yes,
that stretch from
Vancouver to Vladivostok, is the largest regional security,
including Central Asia and the Caucasus.
Exactly. So you have North America, all EU and NATO member states, Western Balkans, Central or Southeast Europe, Central Asia, South Caucasus, Russia. So from one side, it's entire North Hemisphere. So the challenge we had at the beginning, or the dilemma, how can we be an honest broker when the very foundation of the organization has been violated? So we were clear from the beginning. We said, yes, we would be an honest broker to enable a conducive atmosphere for a dialogue, but only if it's within the principles and commitments. And Russia violated those principles and commitments. And our role as chair is to be the guardian of those principles and commitments. And therefore we were very vocal in naming and shaming the aggressor, asking for the withdrawal of the troops, respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine, and also accountability for perpetrators of crimes against civilians in Ukraine. So we employed a myriad of instruments of the OSCE in order to make this happen.
And OSCE, of course, is one of the pillars of the transatlantic security architecture and of the post-World War II rules-based international order that we hear about, and which has frankly provided Europe certainly a period of peace for a couple of generations.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, North Macedonia has faced its share of security and other challenges since its independence from Yugoslavia. And yet, despite all of those challenges, the country has persevered. It reached the Ohrid Agreement, the Prespa Agreement. These were key elements that, along with the Constitution of your country, have allowed you to not only remain stable, but to prosper and to become a member of NATO. Can you tell us more about how OSCE contributed to this process in Macedonia?
When we bid for the chairpersonship of 2023, our idea in mind was to pay back to the international community, to the OSCE as well, for their investment in what North Macedonia is today. And indeed, this is a unique story. A country with a very complex internal composition, in a very difficult neighborhood and difficult geopolitical context, had many ifs at the beginning about its future. And today, it's a model that all the others in the region would like to strive for.
Multi-ethnic, democratic
indeed,
institutions.
Functional multi-ethnic democracy, a unique model that is serving as a reference not only in our region but beyond. It showed that in this region, multi-ethnic democracies can survive, can thrive, and they can be functional. Then, good neighborliness. Though we had many challenges, but we showed that in a peaceful way we can overcome even the most difficult of issues, like the identity issues, name change, the dispute with Bulgaria. We became member of NATO. We chair OSCE today. We chair several regional organizations. We have transformed from a security consumer into a security provider in the region. And this is an amazing story. If you look at from the perspective of where North Macedonia is placed and what are the challenges and influences on that region. And I believe, and I say often, that behind this success of North Macedonia, this unique story, there are stamps of Washington, Brussels, OSCE, many international organizations as well that supported us to get where we are at. So we thought now the time is ripe to pay back. Let's bid for the chairpersonship. And then we needed to choose the priority agenda, the motto. And we said we're going to do it, it's about people. And why is that? Because we realized we were first-hand witnesses of what OSCE is doing on the ground. Usually there is a misperception or distance between what OSCE is doing in Vienna and what OSCE is doing on the ground through its field operations.
The missions.
You might have a perception that in Vienna you have diplomats quarreling over everything and they cannot agree on, because it's consensus-based organization. The trust is very low, so they cannot get to any ground on common ground on any issues. But regardless of that, 13 field missions in Skopje, in Chisinau, in Tiraspol, in Central Asia.
And the mission in North Macedonia was the original.
The mission in North Macedonia was the first one. Here, the idea to introduce field operations of the OSCE started exactly in Skopje in 1992. It was called the spillover mission to prevent the spillover of conflict from ex-Yugoslavia. And since then, we witnessed ourselves its role in bringing multi-ethnic cohesion, in integration, implementation of the Ohrid Framework Agreement. An entire annex of the Ohrid Framework Agreement was given to OSCE for its implementation, the police integration, police training, and I believe that OSCE has left a good footprint in what North Macedonia is today, and it continues to do.
It still has a role. It still is important to
absolutely
maintaining stability and the dialogue that is the focus of OSCE.
There were some people, voices who would say, well, we are now NATO member. Why we need an OSCE field operation? Is it a stigma for a country that if you have an OSCE mission, that means that you have challenges? And indeed, the opposite is the case in North Macedonia. The presence of the OSCE on the ground is a sign of partnership and cooperation with North Macedonia.
A NATO member state.
A NATO member state, which is also a sort of a microcosmos of cooperation between NATO and OSCE overall.
I wanted to ask you about that. NATO, of course, is a defense-focused alliance, despite the claims of Vladimir Putin and others. NATO is about collective defense. That's in its charter. North Macedonia knows that well, becoming the 30th member just a couple years ago. And certainly NATO has helped maintain the decades of peace, stability, and security. I think North Macedonia wins kudos as a NATO ally. Just in the couple of years you've been part of the alliance formally and in your years as a partner with the alliance. But how do you see OSCE-NATO cooperation now and perhaps in the future?
There has been traditional communication and cooperation between NATO and the OSCE. In the last Madrid summit of NATO, in so-called Madrid concept, NATO stressed that it sees a role in close cooperation with the OSCE.
That was in the statement coming out of
Indeed, it's part of the strategic concept of NATO approved in Madrid. The OSCE has some competitive advantages related to security compared to NATO through this comprehensive approach to security.
Because security isn't just a military
It's not
concept.
just military. Environment can bring security challenges, economic issues, human dimensions, human rights, trafficking, women, peace and security. Many aspects that build an environment for a secure society and secure nations. Also the participation of Central Asia's countries in a platform together with NATO and EU member states.
Expanding to the whole former Soviet region.
Absolutely. It's very important. So therefore we see an added value. One of my first trip as CIO in office was to Kiev, to Ukraine, because Ukraine is our overarching priority. The second was to go also to NATO to present our priorities and to discuss how we can work together and to launch the debate and to reflect on the future security architecture of Europe.
I think that's a really important aspect as we go forward. Obviously, OSCE provides a platform for dialogue. I think that's why it's been so crucial, but brings in expertise in the various areas of security you mentioned. What changes to its mandate do you see as coming in the future for OSCE? As you mentioned, it's blocked now. You have budgetary challenges because some countries are, first of all, in violation of the basic principles to which they signed up, but are not cooperating with the organization. What's the discussion? What are people talking about as the way forward for OSCE in coming years?
Well, it was in our plans to launch a reflection process, since we are getting close to the 50th anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act in 2025. And that a reflection process will need to sort of consider the new challenges of the organization and how the organization can adjust to those challenges so it would become more functional and can deliver on its commitments and principles. However, with the Russian aggression in Ukraine and the ongoing war, the trust is at historical low. And we don't think that the timing is now to engage in such a process of reflection, mid-term and long-term reflection about the future of the OSCE. However, this reflection process will need to be launched soon in order to prepare the organization for the upcoming challenges. And I see an important role for the organization in the future, regardless of what the outcome of the Russian aggression in Ukraine will be, what the dynamics in the Central Asia or the discussions over between Armenians and Azerbaijanis will be in the future. I see an important role of the OSCE, and we need, as chair-in-office, to hand over a functional organization to the next one. Unfortunately, at the moment, I don't have a country to hand over the organization.
There's no one in line for the next
Yes, there was no decision for 2024. So we are facing now structural challenges for the organization. No budget approved since 2021. The organization is functioning through monthly allotment from the based on 2021 budget, which cannot allow for new positions, new policies, new activities, but rather it just froze the current activities of the organization. Then at the end of the year, we might face crisis of executive leadership, since the mandates of the 3 autonomous institutions, the Secretary General, will expire, and we will need consensus in order to renew or to approve new heads of those institutions. So what we are facing with, and why I said this is the most challenging and difficult time for the organization. Without political leadership for 2024, without executive leadership probably at the end of the year, and no budget, these are not good omen for the future of the organization. So we had to shift our priorities from implementing the priorities in all 3 dimensions that we had prepared before we assumed the chairpersonship, now into more keeping the organization functional, resilient, in order to continue and to be ready for the future challenges. Even though I have to stress that the organization showed resilience beside this paralyzing mood in which the organization is. For instance, 1 participating state vetoed our presence in Ukraine, blocked our 2 missions there. So we did not just stay and wait for things to change, but rather we found a creative formula to get back to Ukraine, to help Ukrainians, to help Ukrainian institutions with their work. So we launched a special program on Ukraine, which is extra budgetary funded, no consensus in the organization, but
it comes from donations.
It comes from donations from participating states. More than 25 states have pledged so far, and we believe that this number will grow. And through more than 25 projects, we are going back to Kyiv in order to continue our cooperation with the Ukrainian institutions. So this is a sign that the organization is resilient and can work even in these very difficult circumstances in which it is. So we will continue in both tracks to employ the versatile instrumentarium of the organization to serve the communities in the conflict areas, as well as to find ways how to make the organization to reinvigorate, to vitalize, and to make it functional.
I think it's so important at this moment, when we look at what's happening in Ukraine, when we see what Putin has wrought on Ukraine, but also on Europe more broadly, and on these structures where, after all, Russia was an original participating state. In fact, their diplomats used OSCE and its platform for dialogue very effectively in making their own arguments, that we think ahead to how we can shape this. And there's certainly models, as you say. North Macedonia, I think, is a primary model of a country that has been a success with the help of OSCE.
Has been a beneficiary. If
and now you're giving back to that. Do you see other places in Europe at this time where OSCE is also playing a key role?
I'm going next week to Sarajevo actually in 2 days, CIO in office, where OSCE is playing an important role, particularly in bringing communities together, in the process of reconciliation among the communities. And it has established even some good models that we can transpose to other regions as well. OSCE is playing an important role in Moldova. I was there and visited Chisinau and Tiraspol, and OSCE is doing a critical work in maintaining the dialogue, confidence building between the parties, and prevention of escalation or flare-up between the two sides. We even initiated new ideas to bring them to our region, to North Macedonia, in order to continue at least 1+1 format of dialogue, and we are working on that. Hopefully, that will take place during this year.
Certainly, with the agreements that have made such a difference to North Macedonia, the Ohrid agreement,
indeed,
the Prespa agreement, you have a platform and a formula, and working with the OSCE, there's great opportunities there.
Absolutely, that was the initial idea when we showed interest to chair the organization. How we can use the OSCE platform to present, to export, if I can say, our unique models of North Macedonia into different regions. And now, going through this region, I'm realizing that we were right, because many components of these models can be used as a way forward in many conflict areas across OSCE region, including Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Moldova.
It's interesting, we talk about the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, but yet the United States and Canada clearly are not in Europe. Geography matters, as you know better than anyone, coming from the heart of the Balkans, but also the heart of Europe geographically. You cannot change geography, and frankly, you cannot change history. The role of the United States and Canada, having North America involved and engaged in OSCE, underscores what some have said for many years, that the United States is a European power in a way as well, since particularly the legacy of World War II, the defeat of fascism, of Nazism. How do you see the role of the United States at the OSCE? And is this someplace where the United States continues to belong? I believe so.
I believe so. And one of the discussions I had while I was in Washington yesterday and today, and also a month ago when I presented North Macedonia's priority to the Helsinki Commission, was also to see, do United States see a role in OSCE, and do they see OSCE as important for the future? And I went back to Skopje even more confident about the future of the organization when I realized that OSCE, the United States are there and will continue to play an important role in the OSCE, and this of course brings confidence to all of us in the continent and in the organization. And we are working very closely in Vienna, as well as Skopje, Washington, communication on how we can push the agenda of the OSCE forward.
I think you raise an important point, and that is the OSCE involves not just the executive branch of governments, including our own here in the United States, but the legislative branch as well. There is an OSCE parliamentary assembly,
I think
which is effective as well.
The United States is the only participating state of the OSCE that has established Helsinki Commission by law and is doing an excellent job.
And our Helsinki Commission in the United States Congress is bipartisan.
Indeed.
Just as the Wilson Center is a nonpartisan structure mandated by Congress, and we want to focus on how we can understand OSCE's mandate, the role that it's played and the role that it can play in the future as we look ahead.
What we wanted to do during our chairpersonship is how to bring the OSCE to the ordinary people, to the public, about its role, about its the instruments it can employ to ease conflict, to de-escalate conflicts around the world, the stories that we need to present to the people, because it's not only about diplomats sitting around the tables and discussing incomprehensible to the public policies, but it's rather about daily work of people on the ground.
Yeah.
To ease the burden of conflict-affected population.
I often say diplomacy is a contact sport.
Absolutely.
And I think OSCE shows that very much on the field.
Exactly, and this is what we want to do, to bring these stories to the people. I was in Georgia at the OSCE crossing, an artificial wall
created because of Putin's occupation
exactly.
of Georgian territory.
Or in Moldova, how people cannot go to their own lands, to their farms. So there are real problems where OSCE is involved directly to ease those burdens of the people. And we want, during our chairpersonship that we named It's About People, to bring those stories to the public on the role of the OSCE.
Mr. Minister, you've done a great job today in helping us bring that story to the public. The Wilson Center is very pleased to welcome you. We thank you for your time. You've had a terrific visit in Washington with your Prime Minister.
Indeed.
You go back now to a very busy agenda, not just as Foreign Minister, but as the Chair-in-Office of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, an organization that contributes greatly to security on the ground, an opportunity for dialogue and discussion, and I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I will go back with wind on my back in continuing with our endeavors in our national capacity to push our European agenda forward, and the meetings in Washington have been, I believe, instrumental. But also as OSCE CIO in office, even more encouraged that the OSCE is important and United States are engaged in the organization.
Bujar Osmani, Foreign Minister of the Republic of North Macedonia, thank you so much for joining us.